Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Well, boys and girls, the fatigue in my voice is real, but if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm assuming you do because you're listening right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to follow us over on social media, or the social media as the kids call it. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram at either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast 1 for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, the moving image at large, really, because if it's film, if it's TV, if it's a film festival, and we love to write about it and talk about it, and we love it even more when you come and read about it. So please stop on by. On this episode, we're a little late, but it's still going on. We're talking film festivals, and we're talking a fun one, because down for our friends in New York, it is the 9th annual Old School Kung Fu Fest, the Joseph Kuo Edition, which has been running from December 6th until the 13th. It is, it's the Museum of Moving Image in New York and Subway Cinema, and they're presenting newly restored films of fan favorite Joseph Kuo, and these are, well, to put it simply, these are 8 kick-ass movies that are absolutely fantastic. And if you don't know who Joseph Kuo is, that's okay, because he was really a maverick filmmaker. He was from Taiwan, he was an independent filmmaker, and he put really his stamp on so many of these films that came out of this era. And there's some fantastic stuff out there for anyone who loves a good kung fu flick. If you're in New York, get down there and check it out. There has been such a great lineup, and there still is going on through the weekend, so please check it out. But on this episode, we had the unique pleasure of sitting down talking with programmer and the head of said festival, Mr. Grady Hendrix, to talk about the origins of the fest and Joseph Kuo and sort of the magic of cinema of the Orient, be it Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korean. There's so much good stuff out there that audiences really need to see, and this definitely qualifies. Like I said, if you are in New York, go check out the 9th annual Old School Kung Fu Fest, the Joseph Kuo Edition. Wherever you can, Google it, check it out, look it up. But enjoy our talk with Grady, because man, it's a good one. And but like I said, check out virtual screenings, check out actual screenings. Get down to the Museum of Moving Image and check out this amazing, amazing stuff. But first, enjoy our talk with Grady. I'm rambling, but it's a good one. All right. Now, I guess just to kick it off, because, obviously, this film festival is completely right up my alley. You're talking my language. I love it. But I'm kind of curious, because you had initially worked with New York Asian. Like, why, what was the sort of inspiration to go old school for now the 9th year in a row?
Yeah, so we started Subway Cinema, about 5 guys and I, back in 2000, I think. And after we'd shown, we did some not really retrospectives, but lineups of new stuff that was coming out. We did a bunch of the first wave of the new Korean cinema. We did the new Johnny To stuff that's coming out. And then we did a Choi Hark retrospective. And we're like, we miss some of these older movies. So we started doing the Old School Kung Fu Fest. And we were doing the New York Asian Film Festival starting in like 2004 or something crazy like that. And over time, that's really taken on this life of its own. Like these days, the lineup is, it's all new movies for the most part from all over Asia. And the lineup's just massive. And so the guys who really wanted to focus on that have gone off to do New York Asian as its own thing. And a few of us, mostly the original guys, stuck around to do Subway because we feel like, that's where our hearts are, with this sort of like old school stuff. And we also feel like These days you can see so much. It's so much more accessible than it was. Asian cinema is so much more accessible than it was in, say, the mid 2000s.
Right.
But there's so much out there. It's really, a lot gets forgotten, and people have a hard time finding the good stuff. So we feel like when we started, distribution was the big challenge. How do we get these movies to people? And now we feel like curation's the big challenge. How do we make sure that people pick through and find the gold that's out there? And so we love going back and finding things like Joseph Kuo, who is a director no one would have thought to put in a museum, to say, this is someone worth paying attention to. This is a big museum that's sponsoring this. The government of Taiwan sponsoring this. This guy played in grindhouses and like really rundown theaters, and but he's worth it. He's got the chops. He's where you should spend your hour and a half on a Saturday afternoon.
No, I mean, I guess my next question is because, I mean, obviously with films like this, you would be hoping to maybe find a 35 millimeter print in a closet somewhere, but no, there's actually 2K restorations, and these are DCPs that you're getting. Like, how was that a surprise to see that these things are getting restored like this? Or is it like, how do you go through that process to be able to get these films, not just get them period, but get them in the best quality possible?
Yeah, so it wasn't a surprise because we did a lot of it.
There you go. Okay.
So Goran Topalovic, this is really his baby, and he managed to convince like the Taipei Film Archive and Joseph Kuo and an office of the Taiwanese government called TICO, I always get what it's the Taipei Economic Cultural Office, I think, to sort of put up the money and find the materials to do these restorations. And some of them also were being done by a company in the UK, Eureka, that was doing a Blu-ray box set of some of these movies. And so, but the idea is to take these movies, to get them to look as good as they possibly can, and to have them so that anyone can show them now. Like, you don't have to worry about shipping a print or the print getting damaged or degraded or fading or getting scratched. These movies can be seen by anyone, anywhere. And now that people are aware of them, hopefully they'll want to.
How many, like, from just a global standpoint, because I mean, obviously even some of the more casual film fans will know about the stuff that came out of Shaw Brothers and things like that, but it really does feel like there is an untapped treasure trove of movies like these that just really have not been seen all that much on in North America. How big is sort of the pool that you have to sort of work with to sort of pull stuff out and sort of program each year? Because I got to imagine it's probably never ending.
Yeah, it's pretty infinite. The problem is getting materials, but we're finding them more and more. And one reason this relationship with the Taiwanese government and with the Taipei Film Archive is so important is, so you had Shaw Brothers in Hong Kong, and then you had their upstart rival Golden Harvest. But over in Taiwan, a lot of independent producers were working, and a lot of these Shaw Brothers directors would open up. Many of them were from Taiwan, like Chang Che, and who made Five Deadly Venoms.
Right.
And they would go to Taiwan and open a film office there. So a lot of their talent would also work on local independent Taiwanese films. So Taiwan just had this vast pool of technicians, martial artists, actors, and they were just making a ton of these movies. And the audience for this stuff used to be global. So many of these movies got made in the 70s and into the 80s, started to wane a little in the 80s, but really in the 70s. And so there's so much of this stuff out there. I mean, one of the other retrospectives we wanted to do was Robert Tai, who is another big Taiwanese filmmaker who had a really distinct style, very flashy, lots of like special effects, very over the top makeup and costumes and character design. But we felt like Joseph Kuo had a little more recognition in the US because of Mystery of Chess Boxing and Seven Grandmasters and 18 Bronze Men. So we were like, let's stick with someone let's serve something a little more familiar this time and go wild next time, wilder. But yeah, I mean, it is and then we'll always find stuff that we had no idea existed. So there's so much of this out there. It's inexhaustible. One of the movies Garan keeps wanting to show is, I can't remember what the exact title is, but from the 60s from Taiwan. And it is a full-on musical about animals, played by a cast of some of the biggest Taiwanese stars of the day, where everyone's dressed in animal costumes, pretending to be animals and singing and doing musical numbers. We don't want to freak our audiences out that much yet, but I mean, there's a whole slew of weird stuff out there. You know, we did a lineup of Taiwanese Black movies a few years ago, which were sort of Taiwanese movies that really focused on crime and sex and violence. And those are really untapped. And those were mostly from the 70s and 80s, based on gangsters' memoirs, sometimes starring the gangsters themselves. Those things are wild.
Well, we have seen Cats, so I think audiences might be ready for that one. So
Although my favorite version of Cats is the butthole version. Whoever went into the trailer for Cats and put buttholes on them, I'm like, God bless you, sir or ma'am. You are doing the Lord's work.
Now, I mean, I'm curious because at least as for me as a fan, I've always been really fascinated about not just the quality, but sort of the volume of fascinating films that have come out from not just China, Japan, but sort of all through sort of that Pacific Rim. I'm kind of curious, what is it from your perspective about these films that really is so compelling? Because they're like we said before, there is such a huge swath of them that, I mean, we could spend lifetimes trying to watch them all and never quite get there.
Yeah. Well, you know, some of it at this point is just too late for me. I've been watching these movies since my late teens, early 20s, and it's just too late. I can't turn back now. This is my drug of choice. But one of the things I really do like about these movies is there's sort of two things that I think make them really unique. One is a lot of them didn't have the studio structure that we did in the States, and there was a much bigger independent uh, producer universe out there. So, you know, so many of these Taiwanese independent movies were actually being made with pretty substantial budgets. In Hong Kong, you had independent production companies or even smaller production companies. You didn't really have this monolithic studio system like you did there. In Japan, you did. But, you know, then in Japan, you get into the 70s when they were just trying to do anything they could to keep audiences in seats, into the 80s. So they were doing really wild experimental stuff. But you look at Korea, you look at Thailand and Taiwan and even Hong Kong, you did not have this major studio system. So you had a lot more people trying a lot more stuff, just really trying to see what would stick rather than sticking to a traditional formula. And the other thing I really love is that they made so many movies. And in making the movies, they taught themselves how to make the movies. So you can see just some of these people are amazing technicians, whether it's, you know, you look at someone like Carter Huang, or who's an 18 Bronzeman, Return of 18 Bronzeman, or you look at someone like Pali Shangquan. I mean, they were just in so many movies that they developed their own sort of style. They made themselves into their own kind of star. They knew what worked. You look at the action choreographers with their hundreds of credits, and you're like, they were learning in front of the cameras what worked, seeing it in front of an audience and going back and doing better the next time. With the cinematographers, with all of this, it's all these technicians, and their budgets may have been low, but they really learned how to wring the most out of the least. And it's something I always find very inspiring.
Well, and I mean, it feels like it's a generation of filmmakers and storytellers that learned by doing and learned by watching, as opposed to
Yeah.
sort of the cahiers de cinema sort of, you know, high flouting kind of method that, you know, maybe came before it. This was pure volume. This was watching. This was really getting into it and really sort
Doing,
of, like
yeah.
you said, understanding what works and just doing it.
Yeah, and there was also this real desire where the audience was your master. You were there to please the audience. You know, Hong Kong used to have this tradition of these midnight previews where, like, say on a Wednesday or a Tuesday or a Thursday before a movie got released on Friday, they do these midnight previews, and the filmmakers would often watch from the production, but sometimes the prints would still be wet from the lab, and they would watch what the audience reacted to. And sometimes these things got violent. Like, some filmmakers were scared to go because audiences would call them out in the lobby if they didn't like the movie. But they would see, okay, there was a slow part there. We need another joke there. And they would re-edit and sometimes even reshoot bits of the movie in like 48 hours and get it ready for the audience. The audience was king. You know, that was what mattered.
No, and I mean, you're absolutely right. And I mean, it really harkens to what you just said earlier about curation, because I mean, I think about what the world has gone through just in terms of COVID, and the film festival experience has kind of taken a hit a little bit. And I'm curious from
Yeah.
your perspective, how important is it to sort of double down on curation again? Because it feels like the film festival experience kind of forgot that a little bit. And this feels like it's very
Mhm.
focused on curation and giving sort of a very unique and specific experience.
Yeah, well, one thing that I think is really interesting, I think there's two competing interests right now in terms of people cultural gatekeeping. And the one is people just want to have a good time. They just want to forget their problems and they don't want anything chewy. And then the other half is like, no, we need cultural content that speaks to our moment and all this. And even if it's kind of rocky or pretentious, we need to sort of stick with it because it's speaking to where we are. And we kind of feel like, I don't know, man, a good movie's a good movie. And like, it's we're just trying to, put the stuff out there that really we find profound and amazing and mind blowing. And we're hoping other people do too, because that's ultimately why this stuff exists, because you see it and it blows your mind and you fall in love, Um, for me with this lineup, one of the big things is I'd seen 18 Bronzemen years ago, but then to watch 18 Bronzemen when I was doing the write-ups for this, and 18 Bronzemen return back to back, and to realize that it's the same cast in a Shaolin Bronzeman movie, which was sort of invented by Joseph Kuo with 18 Bronzemen, this idea that it was all about the training in Shaolin Temple, and to graduate, you went through this like labyrinth of pain where you had to fight these 18 bronze statue robot people to graduate, and then got a big brand on your boobs, your man boobs. But to look at these movies and realize that, one is from the Ming point of view, where the Ming dynasty had been overthrown by the Qing dynasty, and they were the rebels, and they hid in Shaolin Temple, and they were, preserving these Southern forms of martial arts. And that's where all these Southern Chinese heroes come from, like Wang Fei Hung and Feng Sai, fighting the evil government. And so, yeah. And then to realize that 18 Bronzemen is from the Qing point of view, where the lead character is the evil Qing dynasty. And the whole movie is a flashback about him deciding whether he's going to burn down Shaolin Temple or not. Someone says, are we going to burn down Shaolin Temple? And you get an hour and 20 minutes of the movie with him thinking about burning down Shaolin Temple. It's this enormous training. It's just this bizarre psychedelic training odyssey. And then he comes back and makes this decision in the last 5 minutes. And that's some breathtaking filmmaking that Joseph Kuo thought that an audience would go for that, and he did. And he had the like sort of intestinal fortitude to pull it off. I mean, that blows my mind. That's the kind of filmmaking that I'm in this for. Stuff where someone is taking those risks because they know they can make it work.
What was the pivot moment or movie for you that sort of flipped the light switch on to sort of get you into this business? Because I mean, obviously you're a passionate guy, you're a fan. Was there a specific movie where the light bulb just went off and went, shit, I got to do this? I got to be involved in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form?
Yeah. And there's sort of, it's funny, it's hard to, so there were really two. And one was, there was one. The movie that really got me into all this is being in a Chinatown movie theater and seeing Stephen Chow's Love on Delivery, which I think you can catch on Amazon Prime these days with subtitles in the US. But Love on Delivery is his sort of kung fu comedy movie. And my wife and I were seeing it. We had no context for this. We were at the movie theater because like it was $6 for double feature, and we were in college and we were broke. And we watched this thing, and it was so hilarious and surreal and ridiculous. And Stephen Chow's like a delivery boy, and he falls in love with a girl, but she's being wooed by like a martial arts master, so he has to take the guy on in the ring. But what blew our minds was that it wasn't just funny and stupid and random and surreal with things like he dresses up like Garfield and becomes this masked Garfield hero, but it was the fact that he wins by cheating. And that the message of the movie is you don't have to be strong. You don't have to train. You just have to cheat really, really well. And that to us was like, it was so great. Comedies often try to have a heartwarming moral message, and this was just so not. And so we just kept going back after that. And then probably within 4 or 5 months of that, there were two retrospectives, and this was probably in 93, 94, in New York. And there were these two retrospectives at movie theaters. One was the Rosemary, which mostly showed softcore porn movies from Asia, mostly Hong Kong. And they did a Wong Kar-wai retrospective. And this
Oh,
guy at a video store, Barry Long, was like, "You got to see this. You're going, right?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay," because I wanted to think I was cool. And Chungking Express had just come out. And so I sat there over the course of 3 days and saw Days of Being Wild, As Tears Go By, Chungking Express, and Ashes of Time, probably 3 times each. And I
wow.
was just like, what? I don't get it, but I love it. And then right after that, this guy, Peter Chan, used to do these Hong Kong retrospectives at Cinema Village. He just rent the theater, rent a bunch of prints from Chinese movie theaters. And he did a Jackie Chan one. And I went to that. And my wife and I sat there through probably 8 Jackie Chan movies over 3 days. And we were just like, what? It was too much. And after that sort of like 4 or 5 month period, we were like, why are we watching other movies?
Well, that is a wide swath of choice, but they're all fantastic and they're all genius in their own way. And I mean, I think that's for me what I love, particularly about Asian cinema, because you know you're going to see something that you didn't expect, and you may not even understand, but you know that it's genius the second that it's just presented in front of
Yeah. Wait, what was your gateway movie?
you. For this, honestly, I would probably say Hard Boiled. To be honest, I mean, I know it's a
Oh,
little
yeah.
straight ahead choice, but
No, no, no.
just understanding the fact that there was not CGI, this was all practical in camera shit that they did, blew my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and actually, funnily enough, I've gotten to screen that movie for an audience a couple of times, and there is nothing to apologize for with Hard Boiled. That movie tears down a theater and just leaves nothing but rubble behind. It's really
Totally,
intense.
totally. Now, I mean, just to put a bow on this, because I mean, obviously, there's going to be audiences out there who don't know of Hong Kong or Japanese or Taiwanese or any kind of other cinema other than what maybe Tarantino has shown them, or or know that John Woo did a Mission Impossible movie or that kind of thing. How do you sell
Right.
a festival like this to that audience?
Hmm. With the Joseph Kuo movies, it's easy because Joseph Kuo owned the 70s. He is the iconic kung fu director of the 70s. Minimal budgets, maximum kick ass. And if you think of old school kung fu, because we all know that phrase, we all know what these movies look like.
Yeah,
The image that pops into your mind, it's probably from a Joseph Kuo movie you've absorbed, like you caught on TV one afternoon, you saw a bit on video, you heard a sample from it on a Wu-Tang Clan album,
right.
you saw RZA talking about it. And so these movies kind of like have floating around out there. And when you get a chance to see them in all their glory, looking as good as the day they were made, the way they're meant to be seen, and you go, that's what all the fuss is about. I get it. These are movies where just when you think they've gone as high and as hard as they can, they go higher and harder. They really do. And the biggest special effect in these movies are human beings.
Yeah.
The acrobatics, the martial arts, the choreography, the way people work together. There's no CGI, barely any wire work. It is intense. And you come away from these things thinking, look at what we can fucking do, man. That's amazing.
Minimal budget, maximum kick ass, like you said. And I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing when it comes to action cinema that needs to be
Oh, yeah.
appreciated more and more. And man, keep doing the work, man. Keep doing God's work and putting this stuff on the big screen.
Oh no, thanks for helping to spread the gospel. It's we need to get the word out.
For sure, man. But thanks again for the time and congratulations on the fest.
Thanks, man. Good talking to you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.